going to show you how to make a lemon icebox pie, and this involves making a graham cracker crust, so it gives you a different method on how to make a type of pie. So first I have all of my ingredients ready for the crust. This pie actually takes a little time because you do have to chill the different layers as you're making it. So I just have what I need ready for the graham cracker crust at this point. I have a whole package of graham crackers. So when you buy a box like this, you get these packages in it, and they each come with 9 graham crackers in them. So typically when you're making a graham cracker crust, that's just enough to fill a standard pie pan, which is like a 9-inch pan that looks like this. So I got those. I have 5 tablespoons of melted butter. This is unsalted butter. And then I actually have some sugar too, which is right behind me. So before I do this, I just want to make sure that my oven's preheated to 325 because that's what you're going to cook the crust at. And then get started. So I'm going to take all these graham crackers, and there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to actually just break them up and put them in a bowl for now. If you have a food processor, you can do the same thing. So you're going to break them kind of into about 1-inch pieces, so big chunks like this. And then these are easier to break down later. So you can just use your hands for that. And just break them all up. And then if you don't have a food processor, there's other ways you can do this too. So it can be kind of fun because you're going to get to smash all these up into little pieces. So let's start with this. And then I'm just going to use, I have a plastic bag here. So if you have some sort of plastic bag, you can use that instead. You're just going to take all your graham crackers and put them in the bag. Put the bowl aside for now. And then what you want to do is, this one I have to tie, but you could use like a Ziploc, that would be fine too. And then kind of even them out and give them a little loose tie, just so stuff doesn't fall out. And then with that, you can just take a mallet or something hard and hit it. So you want to go through, don't do it too hard, because if you hit this too hard, they're actually going to break through the bag, and then when you go to pick it up, it's all going to fall out. So just go through, just a little bit of pressure. You can kind of move it around. Make sure you get everything. Break this up until there's really small pieces. You don't want any big chunks because then it's going to be hard for them to combine when you're making your pie crust. Alright, so you can check this out. There's still some bigger chunks, so maybe I'll flip it over. You don't want it to be like so broken up that it's sand. It's okay to have a few pieces that are a little bit bigger, but make sure you get all the good sized pieces. Here we go. I mean, your bag may break a little bit. You can see there's a little bit coming out, but just be careful. I'm just going to take this now. I'm going to put it right over my bowl, and I'm going to dump that from there into the bowl. Just get rid of this. Okay. So if you look at it now and there's still a few pieces, you can kind of break them up with your fingers, but this should be pretty good. Now you can see it's crushed quite a bit. A few little bit bigger pieces, that's okay. Alright. So now what you're going to do is, this actually requires 3 tablespoons of sugar. So I'm going to take my tablespoon and I'm going to measure out 3 tablespoons of sugar. Make sure they're nice and level. Just sprinkle that in there. This is going to give it a little more sweetness, and this is actually going to help bind it together as well. So add that in, and then this can just get mixed up. So if you were using a food processor, what you would do is take your graham cracker pieces and you'd put them in there with your sugar, and then you'd break them up that way so it evenly gets combined. If you're going to use a bowl, you can do what I did and break them up first, and then add the sugar in this, you can also, if you have any pieces that kind of still need to be broken up, you can break them up with a wooden spoon or something else. As long as you get most of it in the bag, it makes your life a lot easier. All right, so sugar and graham cracker combined. And then you're gonna take melted butter. I have unsalted butter here, and this is 5 tablespoons. If you melt butter in the microwave, make sure that you use a microwave-safe dish, and you're actually gonna start it on a little bit less time than you think you would need, because you don't want the butter to start like bubbling and burning. You just want it to melt enough that it's gonna become a liquid. So what you'll do is start at 30 seconds, look at it. If you can then move it around a little bit and get the rest of the butter to melt just right in the container, that's great without having to add any more time. You can maybe add a couple more seconds here and there until it completely melts all the way through. So I'm just gonna add this right in here. If you were using a food processor, you would pulse it just a couple more times. I'm just gonna whisk it together until it's fully combined. So it's gonna look a little bit wet, but you're not gonna be able to notice a clear liquid. It just looks a little bit darker. And you wanna make sure that all of the graham cracker and the sugar gets coated. So it's gonna look like this. It's consistent all the way through. After that, you can take your pie pan and you're gonna dump your mixture evenly in there. So then, you can actually take your fingers and kind of spread it out. You're gonna have to make the walls of your crust as you do this. So spread it out evenly, and then you can take a dry measuring cup or something with a flat bottom, and you can start pushing it. And as you push it from the middle, it's gonna push the crumbs out to the walls, and then you're gonna be able to make a wall along the inside of the pie pan as you do this. So try to keep it consistent so that everything is the same thickness all the way around. If you see any parts that have little holes in them, you can just, you can redo this. It's very forgiving. So if you see there's parts that are missing sections, just take a little bit and kind of move it over. If you have to start all over again, no problem. You can do this until it works out. Just, you want to make sure that you go all the way around and you don't have any like big holes, and that you get a side that's consistent all the way through. There you go. And just keep using that to press things together. And once your sides all look like they're uniform, you're gonna put this in the oven and we're gonna bake this. So typically, once your oven is preheated to 325 degrees, you are gonna bake it for about 15 minutes. So as you put it in the oven, so you're gonna look like this. So as you put this in the oven, you wanna, you'll leave it in there until you start to smell like a fragrant smell in your kitchen. So you'll be able to smell like the sweetness of the graham crackers and stuff like that. It'll start to turn a little bit more golden brown as well. You don't want it to get too dark though, otherwise it's gonna burn. But then that'll warm the sugar up. Mixed with the butter, it's gonna bind it all together. So just like this. So I took my pie out of the oven. The crust is all done. So it's actually a little bit more brown than it was before, and it's really nice and formed in the pan. So I'm actually gonna let that cool on the side on a wire rack. It should cool for about 30 to 40 minutes. You want it to be completely cool in order to put the filling in. So I'm just gonna leave it over here. And then I'm gonna put together the filling as that's cooling. While I do that, I also need to make sure that my oven is preheated to 375 now, so you're actually gonna up the heat a little bit. So make sure that you do that before you get to the second step, because we're gonna have to cook the pie with the filling in it at a little bit higher temperature than what we had done before. So while that's cooling and my temperature on the oven is warming up, I'm gonna get the filling together. So right now, I have lemon juice. that I just squeezed out of some fresh lemons. If you don't have fresh lemons, that's okay. You can also use the bottled lemon juice. So you're gonna need 3/4 of a cup plus 2 extra tablespoons. So that's actually 1 more line above the 3/4 mark. So right now, in order to save some time, so you guys didn't have to see me squeezing all these lemons, I did a lot of it already, but I'll show you how to do one just so you can see kind of a little trick to do it. So I halved the lemons. It takes about 5 lemons in this recipe, but those are, that means like a good size lemon. The ones that I got are pretty small, if you can see. So it actually took me, this is gonna be about 7 lemons for this to work. So just make sure you measure, don't just pick 5 lemons and think that it's gonna be the right amount. So I have the lemon juice, I'll show you how to do that in a second. And then I have 3 eggs, which will work within a few minutes. And then I have some sweetened condensed milk. So this comes in cans that are 14 ounces. I'm actually gonna use 2 of them in this recipe. And so before I use them, I'm gonna take a small dish and I'm going to measure out 3 tablespoons. It's really sticky, so you can kind of use the bottom to scrape it off a little bit, but it's okay if it's not completely exact. In this situation, if it's a little bit more, a little bit less, it's not going to affect the recipe. So I've got 2. And then my 3rd one. So these are actually this is actually put aside so that I can use it later when we make the whipped cream topping that's used for this pie. So I'm just gonna take this, and this can get put aside, and then when I put my pie in the fridge, I'll put that in the fridge with it, and it'll be good to go for later. So I'm just gonna leave this here on top because it's drippy, and we're gonna put that in there after. So I'll show you how to do the lemons. So what you're gonna do is cut it in half, and you can use a citrus squeezer if you have one. It kind of has like a circle, and you take 2 handles and you push them down. Those are the easiest because typically the seeds don't fall out while you're using it. And lemons have a lot of seeds, but if you don't have that, that's okay. You can actually use some tongs instead. So what I've been doing is taking these and holding them over the container, and then you squeeze. And then that way you can get a lot of the lemon juice out. Works a little bit better than just trying to use your hands. So get all that out of there. And do the other half. And as you can see, I don't know if you can tell, but a couple little seeds actually fell in as I was doing this. So what I'm gonna do after, I'm just gonna let any seeds that fell in, no big deal. So make sure I have enough. If you look, it's 3/4 of a cup. This is a 2-cup measure, so 3/4 of a cup plus 1 line, so that's perfect. So in order to make sure that I don't have any seeds in it when I'm making my filling, I'm actually just gonna take another container and pour it out really slowly. And if I see any seeds, I'm just gonna scoop them out with a spoon. So it looks like right now you can see some kind of on the bottom. So I'm just gonna take those and scoop them out with a spoon. That way there's no chance that you end up getting any lemon seeds in your pie filling. That would be terrible. Might crack someone's tooth or just be really unpleasant to eat. All right, so put those aside. And there's all my lemon juice. So I can put that aside for now too. The next thing I want to do is we're just using the egg yolks for this recipe. So I have 3 eggs here. The egg yolk is going to give it a nice yellow color in this situation because I'm going to add this juice to the sweetened condensed milk, but it's not really going to give it much yellow, but the egg yolk, once you add it, it's going to bind this all together, and it's also going to give it like a nice yellowy color. So what I'm going to do for that is, let's see, I need this, I'll take these, just going to set them carefully down, and then over a container, you can crack it kind of right in the middle, and then what you're going to do is pull it apart slowly, and you're just going to let the egg white drip out. So what you can do is then try to use the shell, both sides of the shell, and you can kind of knock off the egg white and gently pour it into the other half. And as you do that, you can get rid of the egg white. So now I just have the yolk. So with the yolk, I can just put it in a container for now. So I'm just going to dump that right in there and get rid of my eggshell. So do that with 3 eggs. Very carefully. This gets a little messy, so I definitely need to wash my hands after this. If the egg yolk falls in there, that's fine. You can scoop it out with a spoon. Just gotta be really careful for this part. And then we don't need the egg whites in this recipe, so it's really up to you. You can save them and maybe cook them with something else, so you don't waste them. So I'm just gonna take these and put them aside for now, and then put those in the fridge, and then I'll cook those later. So I'm just gonna wash my hands. So now I'm gonna combine all the ingredients into a bowl. So what I'm gonna do first is I have a nice good sized bowl here, and then I have a whisk. So I'm gonna try to take a rubber spatula and get as much of this sweetened condensed milk out of the cans. It's sticky, so very hard to get it all. But I'm gonna pour these both into the bowl. One at a time. This has some sweetness in it, so there's no additional sugar put in this. You actually want, with a lemon pie, you kind of want to have some tartness, so that's why there's a decent amount of lemon in this pie. And then the crust is really nice and sweet, and then it'll have some whipped cream on top with a little bit of the sweetened condensed milk in it too, to give it a little bit more sweetness. So you've got enough sweetness to balance out the lemon, and it makes a really, really good pie. So get all this out. Super sticky. All right. These aside. Take my whisk and kind of get this off as much as possible. And so what I'll do next is add in the egg yolks. So I'm going to just dump these right in here. And I'm actually going to use my rubber spatula again to get everything out. So you don't want to waste anything. Like, look how yellow this is. This is going to make the filling have a really nice color, as well as bind it together. All right. So then next, you're going to whisk this together so it's one consistency. It's pretty quick and easy to do. You don't have to stir for very long. There you go, just like that. And then all you do is add in your lemon juice. So I typically add a little bit at a time, just so as you're mixing it, it doesn't splash up. It's gonna look a little funny because sweetened condensed milk mixed with citrus tends to want to curdle, but as long as you mix it, you're okay. And then we're gonna bake it together, so it'll be fine. Starting to get thinner, but as you whip it, the eggs are gonna help add some thickness to it again. Add some air in there. And then the last bit. So you wanna make sure that as you are whisking, that this is all the same consistency. Sometimes when you add the liquid in, you'll see the sides still have a lot of liquid on them and the middle seems thicker. Make sure that you get all of that and it's one consistency rather than having kind of really like runny on the sides or runny in the middle. So here we go. You can see that. And now I've let my pie crust cool, so if I touch it, there's no heat in it anymore. And then you're going to just take this and pour it right in there. Should be just enough to fill up to the top of your crust. I'm just going to use River Special to make sure we get it all. So I'm going to put this in the oven for just about another 15 minutes. We actually want the sides to get a little bit more firm than they are right now. If you shake it, you can see the whole thing jiggles. So we're going to let it cook for about 15 minutes. That should be enough to get the sides to firm up, but the middle will still jiggle a little bit. And then we're going to put it in the fridge, and it actually ends up getting chilled for over 3 hours, just to make sure that it sets completely. So I chilled my pie in the fridge overnight. You need to put it in the fridge for at least 3 hours, but you can do it for 24 depending on when you want to serve it. What you can do when you're letting it cool is you can make your whipped cream right away and then leave that in the fridge too, and then combine the two after it's had time to chill in the fridge, because this is meant to be a cold pie. You don't want the middle to be warm at all. Or you can wait until you're ready to serve it and make your whipped cream then. So I chilled my bowl and my whisk in the fridge with my pie. The reason you want to do that is when you're making whipped cream, the fat in the whipped cream needs to trap the air in order to make that desired whipped cream texture that you like. And if it's too warm, it's going to release that air and it's going to get flat. So you want to make sure you start with a cold bowl and a cold whisk. You can also use a whisk attachment on your mixer if you like, but I'm going to show you how to do it by hand. So I have the sweetened condensed milk that I put aside. This is 3 tablespoons. So I'm just gonna pour that in my bowl. It's sticky. This is gonna add some sweetness. Also thickens it a little bit. So get all that in there. And then I'm gonna take a cup of whipped cream. This is already measured as a 1 cup. If you buy a bigger amount, you can use a liquid measuring cup and then just measure out 1 cup. Dump all that in there. And then I'm going to add 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla just for flavor. And that's all you're going to need for ingredients for this part. So then what you're going to do is take your whisk and you want to start mixing that together until everything's combined, and it's going to start to get a little bit frothy. Right now I can still feel that the sweetened condensed milk is kind of stuck at the bottom of the bowl, so I want to get that combined, and you're going to see it's going to look kind of frothy. Then once everything's mixed, you just start mixing until you start to see it thicken up. This is going to take a little time. Luckily, it's only a cup. So as you can see, it's already starting to get a little thicker. Helps when you have an extra person to take over. Takes a little muscle. thickening up a little bit, but what I'm looking for is I want it to have stiff peaks. So that means when I lift up my whisk, the whipped cream is actually going to be stuck on it and it's going to stay standing up in a peak. So it's thickening now. Might need a break.
Change your wrist action. There you go. Gives it a rest.
Kind of. Starting to thicken up, decent amount. You can see. What? Ribbon?
Ribbon.
Ribbon. This is a ribbon stage where you can see it's making a ribbon. It's getting thicker. Starting to stick the sides a little bit. Now it's starting to look like a little bit like a whipped cream, but it still doesn't have that stiff peak that we're looking for. It's just gonna basically look like it's melting on top now if you added it to the pie at this stage. See, it's still dripping. You're going to use a balloon whisk in this case because it's going to add more air. Make it nice and fluffy. There we go, it's thickening up. Whoop. Almost there. This is really tiring now. But it can be done. So, it's starting to get...
Almost.
Yeah, almost there. It's much stiffer. Just not at that peak stage yet. So if you look at this, you can see it's got, it stays up on the whisk rather than dripping down, which is what you're looking for. So once you get to that point, you can then take your whipped cream, and this is kind of the fun part. You're just gonna dollop it right on your pie and start spreading it out. And another reason why you want to make sure your pie is completely cold is because if you try to put this on there when it's still warm, it's actually going to start melting the whipped cream. So it needs to be all the way chilled. Make sure you get this all the way over the lemon. Nice thick layer. And then you can serve this right away, or you can put it back in the fridge and serve it whenever you're ready. There you go. That's it. Enjoy. All right, so when you're ready to cut this pie, you want to make sure that you use a large knife so that you can make one consistent slice throughout the pie rather than trying to saw it. That's going to ruin the edge of the pie. It's going to become ragged if you try to do that. So what you want to do is find a place that's about right in the middle, and you're going to press all the way down and drag the knife through the crust all the way up to the side. And then let me grab making sure not to touch the blade, just the bottom part of the knife. And then figure out the desired slice size. You're going to do the same thing. So you press all the way down and drag the knife through the crust until you can feel it go all the way to the edge. And then you can use an offset spatula, or if you have a cake spatula, that works too. And you can go underneath. Just make sure if any pieces seem to be caught, you can always go back through. Make sure you get them with the knife. Normally a cake spatula would be a little bit better so that you get this shape of the pie. Here you go, and you can see the layers. You've got your whipped cream, your lemon, and graham cracker. There you go. Enjoy.